All right, if you're moving to Portland or thinking about moving to the Portland metro area, you probably have seen by now that there are a ton of great parks here in the area, not just in Portland, but also in the surrounding suburbs. That's what we're going to talk about in this video. What are the best places to live with access to these parks? All that starts now. Hey, what's up everybody? This is Paul Clem with the Home Team Brokers coming to you from Portland, Oregon. And in this video, we're going to talk about some of the best areas in the Portland metro area for parks. Now, again, there's a couple ways that you can look at this. How many parks there are, how close you might be living to a park, and how large the parks are, because there's going to be a pretty big difference between a park that's just a neighborhood block, little playground, maybe a t-ball field, something like that, compared to something that is maybe a couple hundred acres, 500 acres, with nature trails and hills and viewpoints and things like that. You can really get it all in the Portland metro area on both sides of those extremes and everything in between. So obviously the best parks is going to be a little bit subjective. People are going to have their favorites. So in this video, we're going to talk about where it's in the most abundance. Where could you live in the Portland metro area that not only has some of, the highest regarded parks overall, but the highest volume of parks as well. So this list is not in any particular order, but again, these are going to be the top 5 areas in the Portland metro area for parks. Now, if this is your first time to the channel, or you've been here and you haven't already, and you want to get more videos like this, make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the little bell to get notified every time we drop a new video. And we've helped so many people relocate to Oregon and move to the Portland metro area. As real estate professionals, we love to help with that process. So if that's you, give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email, or click that link down below in the description of the video and schedule a Zoom call with us. Either way, we would love to help with your move to Oregon. Okay, number 1 on the list is going to be West Linn. West Linn is a very scenic suburb, very suburban area, but has a little bit of a rural dynamic when you look at kind of the south and southwest sides of West Linn. On the east side of West Linn is going to be the Willamette River, but to the south you have areas like Stafford, and to the southwest that are relatively undeveloped. So this area, again, you can be kind of driving through a suburb and then kind of be out in the country very quickly, but all within West Linn, you're going to find a ton of really great parks. So you have Mary S. Young Park, you have Willamette Park, you have Tanner Creek Park. So a lot of these parks offer a ton of hiking trails, nature paths, paved or a little more kind of hiking with some elevation changes. You're going to find tennis courts and splash pads and pickleball courts, and a lot of great amenities. So not just beautiful kind of outdoor spaces where you can take in the nature, but a lot of these parks, especially more within the neighborhoods, are going to have a lot of great amenities to bring the kids and spend an afternoon. So West Linn definitely has a lot to offer in the way of parks. There's 20 plus parks overall in West Linn, and over 600 acres of parks and natural areas in West Linn. All right, next on the list is Lake Oswego. So Lake Oswego, much like West Linn, has very beautiful scenery. It's in a lot of ways, in a lot of areas, a lot more wooded places. One of the more wooded places you can get in the Portland metro area. A lot of elevation changes and kind of hills and rolling hills and things like that. So in and of itself, driving around Lake Oswego and West Linn, you'll notice kind of the natural beauty in this area. So when you look at parks, Lake Oswego is as good as it gets. You have like George Rogers Park, you have West Waluga Park. There's a little hidden park at the very top of an area called Mountain Park, which is the kind of the northernmost neighborhood in Lake Oswego city limits. And at the very top of this really kind of mountain is this little round park called Nansen Park, and there's just one paved walking path around it. It's just this level plateau, and you have 360-degree, kind of panoramic views of all areas of the Portland metro area. It's really cool. It's more just kind of an area to maybe go walk around a little bit or sit on a couple of benches up there with a viewpoint. But you also have Springbrook City Park, Park. You have the Iron Mountain Park. You have one park in particular that's actually in southwest Portland, but borders Lake Oswego on the north side, an area called Tryon Creek. This is a park that's over 700 acres. So this is managed by Portland Parks and Rec. It's actually in Portland city limits, but it's touching Lake Oswego. So if you live in Lake Oswego, you can get up into Tryon Creek very easily. This is a state park. So there's a ton of hiking and walking trails through here. There's like a nature center, a visitor center, really beautiful area. So you kind of have that as a bonus living in Lake Oswego. In Lake Oswego alone, there's over 35 public parks and natural areas. There's over 700 acres of parks and natural spaces and green spaces. So definitely in abundance. Lake Oswego is not an enormous area in terms of its footprint, a lot like West Linn in that way. Lake Oswego offers a little bit more as far as the number of parks and the amount of acreage, but pretty on par. But these are relatively small cities, and so definitely have a lot to offer if you're looking to live in an area with access to a lot of great parks. All right, next on the list is Beaverton. So Beaverton, over 20 square miles. It's an enormous area, so much larger than Lake Oswego and West Linn, a much different dynamic as well. West Linn, Lake Oswego, these tend to be a little bit more affluent areas, nicer, more upscale areas. Definitely very popular areas and very desirable, but a little more homogenous as far as what you get in terms of homes, home prices, kind of the types of neighborhoods, layout of everything overall. When you look at Beaverton, you have very true suburban areas. You have areas that feel a little bit more kind of urban residential, where you have a lot of main roads and highways, where you have a lot of commercial development. You have older neighborhoods, 100-year-old neighborhoods, mid-century neighborhoods, up to newer construction. And again, 20 square miles. So this is an enormous area that has a lot of different landscapes as well. So there's some elevation on the south side of Beaverton, and there's some elevation on the north side of Beaverton as well, more kind of up into the West Hills. Everything in between is mostly comprised of the Tualatin Valley. And so this is an area where, again, you get a lot of diversity in terms of landscape, but definitely some notable parks in Beaverton. You have the Highland Forest Park, you have the Tualatin Hills Nature Preserve, you have Greenway Park, you have Cooper Mountain nature area, the Cooper Mountain Park, and then kind of smattered all throughout Beaverton, you have a lot of smaller parks. Pretty much every neighborhood in Beaverton is going to have one, if not, 2 or 3 parks that you can walk to, and these are going to be a little bit smaller, but nice open field, playground, picnic tables, which are really nice to have. That type of access close into a neighborhood. These are all managed by THPRD, so the Tualatin Hills Parks and Rec Department, and they manage over 90 parks throughout Beaverton, and some unincorporated areas of Washington County that are areas that we've talked about in other videos. These are areas that are Beaverton School District, very much so, considered to be Beaverton. In particular, areas on the north side of Highway 26, as well as some of the Cedar Hills area as well. All of that's going to be THPRD, the Parks and Rec Department. And very much, again, considered to be Beaverton, but over 90 parks throughout, Beaverton and some of these kind of fringe areas, unincorporated areas, and over 1,500 acres of parks and natural spaces, nature areas throughout Beaverton. So Beaverton is huge. No surprise that, it definitely has a ton of parks, but especially when you look at a lot of, again, kind of the central section of Beaverton that is more bouncing through residential to commercial areas to more urban feeling areas. Even within these spaces, again, Beaverton has a ton of offer in the way of parks. Okay, next on the list is Hillsboro. So Hillsboro is a lot like Beaverton in terms of what it offers and the size as well. So it's a lot flatter than Beaverton. Beaverton has some areas with more elevation change and things like that. Hillsboro is that Tualatin Valley kind of extending west from Beaverton. So it's a little bit flatter overall, but it's about 25 square miles. So it's actually going to be 25% larger than Beaverton itself. But again, a lot of similarity. Not necessarily as many parks, but a lot of really great parks. I think a lot of people, when you ask them what they like about living in Hillsboro, the parks are definitely something that get mentioned a lot. And so you have like the Orenco Woods Nature Park, you have Rude Bridge Park, you have Noble Woods Park, and there's over 30 parks in the city of Hillsboro, in Hillsboro city limits, which is quite a bit less than Beaverton, but there's over 1,600 acres of parks and nature areas in Hillsboro. So remember, Beaverton was 1,500. So a lot of these parks in Hillsboro are a lot bigger, more walking trails, walking paths, things like that. And maybe a little bit lower volume of some of these just kind of neighborhood parks that are, the size of a couple of blocks, 2, 3, 4, 5 acre, smaller neighborhood parks. So definitely still a lot to offer. A lot of the parks in Beaverton are going to be accessible from Hillsboro as well. So really living in kind of this area that makes up most of the west side of the Portland metro area, being Beaverton and Hillsboro. Throughout both of these areas, you have well over 100 parks, well over 3,000 acres of parks and natural areas. And so again, Hillsboro, definitely a lot of great parks in the area. All right, next and finally on this list is Happy Valley. So Happy Valley is an area that's really been developing over the last 20, 25 years. And you still have a lot of relatively undeveloped land. And it seems like all the time, Happy Valley and this kind of general area, they are taking on land or preserving land to keep as natural areas, putting in walking trails, building it out a little bit, building in some of those amenities, but kind of preserving some of the natural green spaces that Happy Valley has overall. I mean, you have like Scouters Mountain, Mount Talbert, Mount Scott. You have the Happy Valley Nature Park. There's a lot of little parks too, kind of smaller parks, kind of smattered throughout some of these neighborhoods too. It's probably like Hillsboro in that way, where there's not as many parks overall as far as the volume, but they have these areas, these larger parks where you get out there and you feel like, you've driven 100 miles out of the city and you're kind of out amongst nature. And I think one of the really cool things too about some of the parks in Happy Valley is you have these hills or these little mountains, again, like Mount Talbert, Mount Scott, for example, where you can climb some elevation and get some really cool viewpoints, especially of Mount Hood too, right? So because you're on the eastern, or I guess as you're watching this video, you're on the eastern end of the Portland metro area, where if you keep going east, you'll get to Mount Hood. So you're a little bit closer to the mountain. You can get some really nice mountain views out here, really living anywhere in Happy Valley, but from a lot of these nature parks, a lot of these parks that you can get out, walk around, get to some of these viewpoints. It's really incredible. Again, there aren't a ton of parks in terms of volume in Happy Valley overall. I think on their website, there was only about 12 or 13 listed, but the Parks Department there does manage over 550 acres of natural spaces or nature areas and parks. So kind of on par with Lake Oswego and West Linn in terms of the volume, but definitely some really great parks that I think fly under the radar a little bit too for a lot of people. Unless you live in the area, a lot of people in the Portland metro area might not necessarily know about some of these parks, in particular the ones that you can get out and hike around. So Happy Valley, definitely an area to consider if you are prioritizing areas with really, really great parks. Now we have an honorable mention. We have Tualatin, which definitely has some of the best parks, suburban parks in particular, in the Portland metro area. You have like the Tualatin Community Park, Ibach Park, Atfalati Park. You have the Browns Ferry Park, some of which are on the Tualatin River. So you can access the river, put in your kayak or paddleboard, or just walk along the walking paths along the river. But a lot of these parks have really great playgrounds, really big open fields, sports fields, basketball courts, tennis courts, pickleball courts, a lot of really great amenities and very accessible. I mean, Tualatin is a very, very suburban, kind of dense suburban area. And so anywhere you live in Tualatin doesn't have an enormous footprint. So it's not a huge area. Anywhere you're living throughout Tualatin, you're going to be able to access some of these really great parks, probably within walking distance or a very quick drive. And so it's not so much the volume necessarily, it's probably more of like the per capita in terms of parks that you get in Tualatin, but also the quality of parks. You don't have a lot of these really kind of undeveloped wilderness areas, nature areas with a lot of, you know, unpaved walking paths and trails and things like that. You can get a little bit of that. Again, it's more of kind of a curated, developed environment where you get these parks with a lot of great amenities. So in Tualatin, you know, there's just over a couple hundred acres of natural spaces and parks managed by the Parks Department there. But again, not all parks are created equal, and Tualatin always noticeably really great parks, something that gets commented on a lot. I think it's something that people who live in the area really enjoy. So have to give Tualatin a shout out when we're talking about parks in the Portland metro area. So if living in a suburb or area with a lot of green spaces, parks, nature areas is a priority for you, if you want to talk about other areas that still offer some great parks and opportunities to get outside, or if you want to talk about areas within the Portland metro area to live that give you better access to going out to Mount Hood, you know, getting to some of the big state parks or national forests, getting out to the Oregon coast, we can talk about all of that. Make sure to give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email, or click the link down below in the description of the video and schedule a Zoom call with us. On that call, we can talk about not just your budget, your timeline, you know, kind of the needs and wants, but also what type of neighborhood, what type of environment that you want to live in. And then we can really start narrowing things down from there. If this video is helpful, make sure to hit the like button. That helps us out a lot. And if you want to get more videos like this, make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the little bell to get notified every time we drop a new video. As always, we really appreciate you watching, and until next time, we'll talk to you later.